Wasn't that part of your dream?
Oh yeah, that was the second one. That's the second one.
Oh.
Alright, so embodiment of these energies that we were just working with is obviously the crucial piece of the puzzle. If you embody these energies effectively, and you start walking your talk, so to speak, then it's going to be a natural and easy process of integrating them into your daily life. You can tap into them pretty much at will, and whenever push comes to shove, you literally make it your driving force. The energy becomes what powers you up.
I like that. I said, when push comes to shove, you make that your driving force.
Yeah, you can quote me on that.
I'm doing it.
Now, one of the ways to embody it is to just learn to tap into the part of the body where the energy resides. But as Stefan and I also discussed a few minutes ago, developing a culture of movement associated with this way of being and having this energy as your driving force would be a more effective aspect of embodiment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that nobody teaches. As far as I know, like literally nobody teaches that. I had to coin this whole phrase, harmonious culture of movement, because people don't talk about culture of movement. The culture of movement exists as a terminology mostly in city planning and other types of traffic management. So the culture of movement often is referred to as either where traffic flows or where the foot traffic goes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, okay, well that's kind of an interesting paradigm, but we're looking at personal empowerment and personal embodiment of this principle. So obviously we're talking about developing our own culture of movement.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a way to remind ourselves with each and every move we take, or each and every move we perform, that we are the walking manifestation of this energy. For example, we were just exploring this movement that looked kind of like signs of infinity that you are making with your arms. Well, obviously you're not stuck with just these movements. There are plenty of other movements that you can perform in your body, with your body, that could also serve as the reminder of similar culture of movement. So then we begin to understand, well, this culture of movement has certain qualities, such as, in this case, non-stop infinity quality. It's a movement that doesn't move linearly from point A to point B. It's more circular or oval or some other sign of infinity shape. It also may be a movement that doesn't have a beginning and end, like a yin and yang depiction in Chinese philosophy. So basically, that's one of the things that we actually study in Qigong. That's one of the reasons why we study Qigong, is so that we actually embody the certain qualities of consciousness and energy that are associated with our values.
Help us embody consciousness?
Yes, the certain qualities of consciousness
Qualities of consciousness, yeah.
and energy
Qualities of
associated with our highest values. We talked about values yesterday. Today we were also discussing how we would need certain qualities of character or qualities of consciousness that would help us manifest our dreams. If those qualities are not among our list of values, that would be an invitation to rework our list of values and include those qualities. Because if we don't include those qualities, what's the likelihood of us actually valuing them enough to integrate them into our behavior or into our being.
So it's you'd have to replace, because at some point there's a fire in the house and you gotta grab your top 3 favorite values as you run out the door. So then you have to actually replace one and put one of these in it.
Yeah.
To help keep that person in that state of consciousness, to help them to access actually their own chosen state of consciousness that would help them achieve their dream.
Exactly. So if there are certain qualities of consciousness or qualities of character that would help you manifest and live your dreams, ideally they would be part of your list of values, right? If they are not part of the list of values, well then you can rework your list of values and include these qualities in it so that you would actually know consciously that I value these qualities, I uphold these qualities, I do whatever it takes to maintain these qualities of character. Obviously, that will make it a lot easier for us to actually embody these qualities.
Yeah. When we did the value exercise yesterday, and then later on as I thought about what my goal was for this exercise, I realized the quality of consciousness was nowhere on my list of values. So it's like, good, note to self.
Which quality was that?
Well, one is openness, and playfulness, and we went over my values, so it's
Cool.
weren't on one.
So that was funny
Not yet.
because I just wrote down like order and control versus at ease and flow. Like, this has.
Yeah, so reconciling those would be interesting. And finding which are actually more pertinent
Right.
to you.
Well, that may be to me in the moment who I think I am, but because it seems like the dreams are always just a little bit beyond where you're at, a little bit beyond the state that you hold, or else it wouldn't be a future thing, it'd be this is a now thing.
Correct.
So
So
there's some reconciliation work. Test it, price and testing.
yes. This is where harmonizing polarities comes really handy.
Okay.
And also, when we develop the quality of consciousness, then it's always a great idea to see how would it affect my culture and movement. So we literally learn how to walk the talk. When people use this phrase, walking the talk, they usually don't even know what it means. Well, it actually means creating the culture of movement where each and every step you take on earth would be an embodiment of a quality of consciousness or character that we were just working on.
Could you restate that idea again?
Yes. When we're talking about walking the talk, by talk we mean talking about certain qualities of character or consciousness that would help us manifest and live our dreams. So what we'll do is we learn how to walk the talk by learning how to embody these qualities of consciousness so that wherever we go, there we are. We are a walking manifestation of these qualities of consciousness, and people may even see that in us from without. So for example, if you have a certain quality of let's say courage, and you are walking into the room, people may not know anything about you, but they look at you and just the way that you walk in already translates to them unconsciously that this is a person who has a significant amount of courage. Now, the courageous person is no different, is going to move differently from a person who is a coward, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference?
Well, one holds in, or down, or both, and possibly a little out because they're hugging the wall.
Way out.
A courageous person would hold forth and up.
Sometimes. It depends on whether or not they're expressing this courage as a certain projection of their energy, or they're just simply courageous because they're not afraid of whatever comes their way. So if, for example, you're courageous no matter whatever life throws at you, then you can have that courage, for example, to step in front of a group of people and you just speak to this group of people like it's no big deal. because you just have the courage that no matter what happens, you're not afraid of it.
So are the qualities of consciousness supposed to be the same as your values, which are supposed to be the same as your physical movements?
Ideally, it would be.
Okay.
If they are the same or closely knit together, that means you have a sense of integrity and you're not feeling like my values are this, qualities of consciousness are over there, completely different. Like we were just talking about reconciliation. We need to basically reconcile them so that they're more or less integrated into the same unified field. And then from that integration, we also learn how to embody it so that we are literally moving the way that a courageous person or whatever quality of consciousness you aspire to embody, that kind of person would move. So for example, if you have a role model of that quality, you simply imagine observing how that person moves. If the person is really an embodiment of that quality, the culture of movement is going to be different from the culture of movement who doesn't have that quality. For example, if I have the quality of open-mindedness, open-minded person is not going to be moving in the same way as the person who's closed-minded. Why? Because closed-mindedness goes hand in hand with some degree of limited range of motion, because of mental flexibility and physical flexibility go hand in hand. So open-minded people often have greater, more fluid range of motion. Closed-minded people, for example, they often, if they turn kind of like this, like they don't have the mobility. Sometimes it seems like they're just old, but I've seen plenty of young people also being kind of like this. Basically, you look at them and they look kind of stuck.
Yeah, but there's one student in particular who has an interesting syndrome who moves very rigid, but yet his mind seems fairly open.
It appears to be,
Yeah, I mean.
but if you ask him, he will say not really.
Oh, really?
So.
That's the other part, that's what I was saying, I think earlier, we're talking about like that perception, right? People might perceive in their heads that, yes, I see myself in the mirror, but, or I feel that energy, but in reality they don't. Right? That's what I was asking earlier, how do you know that this person is being true to themselves?
Yeah.
And you were saying the quality assurance part.
Yeah,
Yes.
pleasure.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
But same thing, right? Like how do you, you know, like people can, I don't know, I've talked to people where, you know, like they seem to be open-minded and I think we've talked about this, where like they read all the books in the world, but they don't practice anything that is in those books. They have the knowledge in their head, right? But they don't put it into practice.
Oh, so it's not a problem of open-mindedness, that's a problem of application of their knowledge.
Right, I'm just giving an example, right?
Sure.
Like people say like, oh yeah, I'm very spiritual, I've read this and I've read that, but they don't practice it, right? It's not like their lifestyle, they just can give you all the information that they read in that book, right? Because they're good readers, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, but then that knowledge is not something that they put into practice in their lives. But you
Right.
talk to them and they're like, oh yeah, blah 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 blah. And they're like, oh wow, this person knows a lot. But do they really put it into practice? Do they really embody what they read?
And sometimes I would ask them, what does it mean to be spiritual? And you listen to their answer. And some person may say, well, being spiritual means blah, 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 blah. Very few of them will say being spiritual means reading 50 books a year on spirituality. Why? Because it really isn't that spiritual. It's kind of a gateway to spirituality, but not necessarily, that doesn't mean that you are spiritual. Now, if that person starts answering this question in a way that makes sense to you, let's say, well, being spiritual means understanding law of karma, or practicing compassion, or blah, blah, blah. And then you ask them, so how is it working for you? How is it in your life? Do you feel like you're a walking manifestation of compassion or awareness of karma? If so, great. We don't have to convince them, no, you're not spiritual enough. Because, first of all, that would mean that we are coming off as the person who has the judgment of them. And secondly, if they feel sufficiently spiritual and they don't feel
There's
like
no
they're,
pain point, yeah.
yeah, there's no pain point. There's no need for us to change them, to prove to them, no, you're not spiritual enough. You need to get more spiritual. So get in line now. It's like we don't coach people who didn't ask for coaching. If we did coaching of those people who didn't ask for it, we would be constantly just busy coaching everybody for free. We want people to go through a certain process of enrollment. And then, if they want to improve the quality of their spirituality or personal development or level of satisfaction with that area of their life, we can help them with that. But we're not going to be telling them, no, you're just bullshitting yourself. All these books that you read about spirituality, it didn't make a difference because you're still the same asshole as you used to be.
So since you're changing the state of the consciousness of the observer from one of always recognizing hypocrisy to one being the open question to ask, if anything, a potential facilitator for creating a pain point in that person so that they might actually care. But nobody actually had the skill or the I guess, right place or right time to even ask the question to them. You know, I mean, that's kind of interesting.
Right. Like I always say that most of these questions that we learn to ask are the kind of questions that even best friends wouldn't ask.
Right.
Because how often do your best friends ask you about your level of satisfaction with your spiritual growth?
Yeah. Well, it depends on the friend, but right, like most people aren't even trained. I mean, I've been spending years just trying to figure out how to ask meaningful questions. To
Well, that's exactly what we're studying here today.
So, to expect my friend who might not be studying that, unless I decide to have only friends who have studied. Depends on how I want to make my friendship circle.
Well, yeah, you learn to surround yourself with people who are of like mind and at least somewhat
Not
comparable or even higher level of development.
Gotcha.
Because people who you surround yourself with will have influence on you. Let's not fool ourselves. Now, what kind of influence would we like to experience? If we experience influence from other people, well, let's make that influence actually meaningful and make it helpful. Okay, well, that means that we need to surround ourselves with people who have this capacity to actually provide helpful influence. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does.
Cool. Now,
Can you?
do you have a question?
Water?
Pardon?
I'm asking you to drink some water.
I can drink some
Your
water.
eyes are just see the dark circles. It's an agreement we had. So I'm fulfilling an agreement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Any questions about this particular practice, guys? No?
I think I just need to retype everything and put it into kind of more of a kind of as Stefan's really good at kind of re-clarifying, kind of a little line item that I might have as a cheat sheet that I can whip out in my purse.
Yeah.
Or stick, my.
As a matter of fact, if you guys don't mind typing up your notes, I will do my best to get the transcripts of our recordings.
Okay.
So what we'll do then is we'll have a really nice material that then we can share with each other or even create like a workbook for Qigong coaching, handbook for Qigong coaching.
Okay, so my question is, if every culture of movement if every quality of consciousness has a different culture of movement, how do you necessarily tell which movement corresponds to which quality of consciousness? Or is that something that you have to determine within?
Yeah, you have to determine a lot of this within, because you may or may not be exposed to a variety of different cultures of movement. For example, in America, there are a lot of people from different parts of the world. But if you, let's say, grew up in Iceland, you're most likely been exposed to Icelandic people. Or if you grew up in Japan, most likely you've been exposed to Japanese people. Now, there are some other people who are foreigners, but
like
they're
the true
few and far
culture.
between. What we see is that people in Iceland, for example, move differently from people from Japan. Can we say that they have different qualities of consciousness?
Yeah.
Heck yeah. If the person, for example, comes from Russia, they're guaranteed to move differently from the person from India. For example, native Hawaiians move radically different from Haoles. And now there are different Haoles coming from different parts of the world that still have white skin. For example, I came from Russia to Hawaii. They couldn't even call me Haole because I was not an American. I didn't occupy their islands. And so what happened was, and my culture movement is also different from most Americans. So what happened was they were actually often talking to me about like, wow, this is really cool how you do this kind of things. And the same also applies to people from different strata of population. For instance, when we're talking about how a policeman, for instance, will have a different culture of movement as compared to, say, a criminal. Although sometimes the lines are blurred. So, and you can look at the cop and you can say, oh, this is the crooked cop.
Right.
Just like you can look at a politician and you can say, oh, this one is a crooked one. Now, how do you know? You may not consciously understand it, but your unconscious mind picks up certain clues that give you this sense or this hunch that there is something crooked about that person, or there is not, and the reverse, maybe something is really honorable about that person. Like the person with a high degree of integrity will have a different body language, a different culture of movement as compared to a crooked cop, for instance.
Okay.
Now, you may not have a clear answer, and I may not have a clear answer as to what exactly these differences in the culture movement might be. But as we imagine ourselves, visualize, for example, encountering somebody who is a really person of integrity, and then encounter somebody who is a crooked person, a cop or whatever, and we can recognize that there is a difference between them. We may not put the finger on it so easily, but there's going to be some difference. So what we do is we learn how to discern. So discernment is not even about labels, it's about resonance. That's why we constantly learn how to let go of labels, especially such labels as good and bad, and gravitate more and more towards using discernment, which is about energy resonance, where you don't have to put the label, oh, this is a crooked cop, or this is a good cop and bad cop, You basically just feel a resonance. Now, that also will be very subjective because it will depend on how integral you are as a person. Well, that means that there is no one perfect example of absolute integrity. It's all relative.
Okay.
The relativity of everything is something that is hard for many people to grasp because they're so used to, they're so indoctrinated into believing that there is absolute good and absolute bad. Once we dispense with this notion or this stereotype thinking, then it becomes a question of relative resonance.
Okay. So then, even though the quality of integrity, for example, might appear as a slightly different culture of movement from one person to another, there's still a similar theme that your unconscious body can recognize as integrity.
Exactly. Because they may have other values. Those people are not just the person of integrity and have zero other values. They probably have some other qualities of character that will create bias.
Okay. And then,
Yeah. And that's perfectly okay. We just simply learn to recognize that there are certain specifics that we're looking for.
So it's like, so we're replacing the hazards of thought with resonance tests while recognizing our own
relative.
character, like recognizing the something of character,
Yes.
Okay.
And one of the things that we can observe, for example, is which energy center is being particularly active. Because different states of consciousness are associated with different energy centers. How do we know that this person has an active energy center? Well, we can push them, but if we don't have ability to push them, whether because we are coaching this person by Skype or by Expertise TV, or maybe we are just observing this person from a distance. Well, one of the ways is to observe how the person moves, as though there is a particular part of the body that's kind of leading. For example, you might have seen some people who walk like this, like they're leading with their chest. Some people may be leading with their head. Some people may be leading with their solar plexus or something else. And whatever part of the body seems to be the predominant energy center or the most proactive energy center often is the proactive energy center indeed. So in other words, we learn how to kind of develop the perceptivity visually. Because much of our studies is dedicated to kinesthetic awareness, when we work with a coaching client, we want to transition from visual to kinesthetic. So not only do we want them to learn and be able to observe visually that the person may be operating from one energy center or another, we want them to learn what it feels like to operate from one energy center or another. We don't just ask them willy-nilly to try different energy centers, even though it may be a fun practice to do in itself. But we also want them to discover which energy centers are particularly associated with those qualities that they want to embody. If they can find specific energy centers associated with the qualities they want to embody, then we can ask them what it would be like to move operating from those energy centers, or letting that energy be the driving force.
Okay, so whichever energy center is being used, did you say that might visually appear to be the part of the body that is leading them?
Yes, moving first. So basically,
like
yeah.
whatever part of the body is leading, that's
Yeah.
the energy center that is being active.
Okay.
yeah. Like for example, if I'm doing a movement, let's say forward push, I cannot move forward. I cannot really do an effective forward push like this. Leading with my lower dantiana, second chakra.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good wave though.
Exactly.
The massive way, but I'm really gonna push myself away from whatever I'm trying to push.
Right.
Definitely.
Before you get there, right.
Yeah. If I do the forward push, but I'm leading with my head,
Oh, sure.
it's going to be also deficient energy projection. So we basically recognize that if a person is leading with a particular energy center, they often move that part of the body first. Say I'm doing a lotus kick, which is associated with which direction of energy projection? Upwards. Which part of the body do I move first?
Your head.
Yeah, I cannot make any quality lotus kick moving any other part of the body first. Yeah, it's like, it just doesn't work. You have to move your head first, then everything kind of follows that. For example, if I'm making a downward press, but I'm leading with my throat, it's going to be a hideous downward press, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I use the solar plexus, I will do downward press in a very different manner. If I use, for example, my first chakra to do downward press, it looks kind of like this. That's totally different quality of movement, and it's going to be deficient as well. So we test how we move, we observe how other people move, and we start noticing certain holding patterns, energy centers that are particularly involved or active, and also if the person is making movements that are disjointed, jerky, start-stop, or linear, or any other type of robotic movements.
And would it be effective to imagine a chart, so to speak, where each energy center could be associated with a different quality of consciousness? Or like each energy center is associated with like a range of qualities of consciousness that all have to do with that center?
Yes, it would be very convenient for many of my students. Many of my students actually ask me, why don't you create a chart like this? And I always answer in a very Zen-like manner. I say, look, you won't do the testing if I give you the chart. The testing is one of the most immediate and effective ways to actually get it. Like discover for yourself which energy centers are associated with each holding patterns. If I just tell it to you and put it on the chart, I can guarantee that most likely you're not going to do any testing, or you would just skip over it because it's already been put together for you. What it means that you will not do the exploration. And the reason why we test is not only to discover for ourselves which energy center are associated with which holding pattern, but also we learn how to return to neutral. After each and every exploration of the holding pattern, go back to neutral. Go back to neutral. Go back to neutral. Neutral becomes a default. After a while, you just get used to going back to neutral so much that it actually becomes your standard operating procedure, or modus operandi, as they say. So you literally develop the neutrality or equipoise in the physical body, as well as learn how to return to neutrality in terms of your consciousness, which is what we call equanimity. So it would be convenient, but I think it would be too convenient.
So the idea of a chart does exist, but each person should build it for themselves.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, because it's like reinventing the wheel. Yeah, everybody would be happy if everybody, if when you learn about the wheels, you would be just given this wheel, saying, okay, this is how it works. You don't have to reinvent it. Just assemble it together with a cart, and here you are. You have a cart on wheels. Okay, well that's really easy. That's how everybody's learning. But because they're not inventing it themselves, they often don't have the insight of how it works. Why does it work this way? So what we do is we want to develop insight.
So it's hard to evolve it then.
Yeah, you may actually reinvent the wheel and discover, oh, there is a better way to make a wheel.
Well, the whole point is if this is for self and others, then
Yeah.
if you reinvent it, you'll actually connect with that which can evolve in you versus just mirroring.
Somebody else's knowledge.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, it's not an insight, it's an outsight.
Right.
All right, so given that, we learn how to develop our sense of embodiment, and there is also one more thing that I covered relatively briefly in one of our webinars, and that is working on filters of perception. Remember that one? Literally creating a quality of perception as if we are looking at everything through a bubble. As a matter of fact, both in psychology and in metaphysical literature, they often talk about aura being like a bubble. Well, if it is a bubble of perception through which we look, we can also say it's like a soap bubble that has a variety of different colors on it. And depending on which part of the soap bubble we have the window of perception, because we don't have perception really wide open, most people have it relatively limited. A window of perception may be pointing at this particular part of the bubble where the color of the soap, what do you call it, like membrane, is of a particular quality or hue. So
It's like rose-colored glasses.
Yes, you can basically perceive everything through that type of filter of perception. For somebody, for instance, who is afraid, no matter what they look at, often it's gonna trigger some degree of fear, or remind them of how they were afraid of something in the past. And if they're communicating with another person, often they will be very suspicious of that other person, or afraid that they're gonna hurt them somehow. In other words, there's gonna be a major bias associated with that filter. What does it mean? It means that if the person is trying to achieve something that requires courage, this filter of perception won't work, or won't allow them to actually be courageous. So what do? You have to change the filter. You can either reorient your window if you can find a different part of the bubble where there is an energy associated with courage instead of fear. Or just simply repaint the whole bubble into energy paint associated with courage. Make sense? So whatever energy paint might be, whatever color, whatever texture it may have, it's subjective. So each person may have certain idea about what that energy paint might look like. Depending on that person's opinion of how it might look like, that would be the quality of energy paint that will be used for repainting the entire energy bubble. It can be a very similar practice to what we've just done a few minutes ago, connecting with the source of that energy, whether it is somebody who's a role model or ourselves, and gathering the energy paint and then pouring all over the bubble, creating a different filter of perception. Uniform or relatively uniform, wherever you go, you turn your window of perception in any direction, you still have that courage. Wow, that is really cool. It's like you can't go wrong with that. Yeah, it's a foolproof method that really makes the perception different. But what's cool about it is that this filter works in both directions. Not only your perception becomes more courageous, but also your communication becomes more courageous. So in other words, energy flows both ways through the filter. Information and energy both flow in both directions. And so as you become capable of perceiving things as more courageous, also you communicate more courageously. Now that is like a dream come true for somebody who would want to, for example, be a public speaker. Because you actually are communicating in a way that is free of fear and has the energy of courage. It will influence other people also in a similar manner. It's almost like you are sending them that energy that resonates with courage and will trigger their resonance. If they have any energy of that kind themselves, it will create resonance. They will respond more positively to you, basically create a rapport. Well, that's what we want in our communication in most cases. So, in other words, what we...
Like courage seen is courage expressed.
Yeah. So then we learn that it's not only embodiment and our culture of movement, it's also our communication that needs to be painted in that energy paint as well. How do we do that? By working on filters. It can be anything else. It can be, for example, like in one of my webinars, I think I mentioned the ability to learn really quickly. Well, that may be another filter of perception. How quickly do you recognize a learning opportunity? You look at something, and if you perceive it as a learning opportunity rather than a problem, right away or within seconds, you are not going to be struggling with the problem. You're going to be in a learning state of consciousness and quickly learning whatever you can learn. Unfortunately, most people take long time to recognize that what they experience is not quite a problem, actually it's a learning opportunity.
Well, that's the whole buttons being pushed. They'll get triggered and that they get more in the state of consciousness of the trigger. and the reaction versus,
Even before the button gets triggered,
huh,
information gets to their energy bubble
uh,
and starts percolating through the bubble as it is being filtered through the filter of perception. What they get
fascinating.
is not necessarily what is out there. It is a subjective perception of what's out there. It's just like you look at the mountain, big tall mountain. For some person, the mountain instigates the sense of adventure. They want to climb it. They want to conquer this mountain. Another person looking at the same mountain, from their perspective, they may experience fear. Oh my God, that mountain is covered with snow. What if there's going to be avalanche? Or something else. Who knows? For another person, it may produce the sense of awe. For some person, it may produce the sense of curiosity. What's behind this mountain? Something like that. So basically, it's like each person looks at the same damn thing, but experiences a different thing. Because they're no longer looking at the thing, they're looking at the perception filtered through their filters. And what happens is that the perception is often mixed with our own projections. So then projection plus perception intersect. This is exactly how holographic imaging works. Have you heard of holographic imaging?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it requires two beams to intersect to create a 3D image, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's exactly what's happening here. There is one beam of energy, of information, that's coming from without, but is filtered through our filter of perception, plus another beam of information and energy that's projected out, and basically superimposed, they create an intersection that looks like a 3D image. It's like we're living in a holographic universe. We constantly perceive things around us that appear to be three-dimensional objects, but most of them are actually intersection of certain ideas that filter through the filters of perception, plus projections that we send out. Boom.
So projection is a two-way street, along with perception. Because because this person inside the bubble also will be projecting outward based on their state of consciousness and character, which would include this filter. And then there'd be the outer world doing their projections onto the person, or just projections because that's where they're at.
Exactly.
So projection's a two-way street along with their perception.
Yes. So the filter is the two-way filter. It goes both ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates our reality.
Exactly. We literally live in a holographic reality. Once we understand how much our reality is the function of this type of filters of consciousness and activity of our consciousness, we realize that basically this is what we call dreaming. This is why the shamanic cultures of pretty much every nationality that I know of talks about the same dreamlike nature of reality in different words. Some cultures speak of it very directly. For example, Tibetan shamanism, or maybe Australian shamanism, we talk about dream time. But for example, Native American shamanism also uses very similar terminology. Like the guys from Mexico, let's say Don Miguel Ruiz, Carlos Castaneda. Well, originally Castaneda was, I think, from Brazil actually, but he lived in Mexico or traveled to Mexico a lot, studied Mexican shamanism. Many, I would say probably Peruvian shamans, they have some degree of recognition that our world is very much a dreamlike experience. I think they're called Keras. So one of my students studied with Keras a great deal, so she comes back with more and more interesting insight or recognition of how much what she learned from me and what she's learned from Keras basically is like the same thing, just expressed in different words. Yeah, so wherever you go, basically Hawaiian shamanism, Huna, same idea. Chinese shamanism, also often referred to as Taoism, basically an organized form of shamanism in China, also talks about the same nature of reality as being a dream. So what we learn is how much we're dreaming up our experiences. That's why we talk about how we don't just perceive goals, or we don't pursue goals, we manifest our dreams. Because even what we're living in right now is also a dream. As a matter of fact, what we're living right now probably was a dream back a few years ago. So we've already manifested that dream. Well, let's celebrate. We've actually done a good job manifesting that dream. Now what? Well, we have more dreams to manifest. So the process is going on. We also realize that the flow of the dreaming is essentially the flow of things in the universe, the Tao. And so we learn how to be in the flow of that. And if everything is made of energy in this world, or in the dream, we learn basically that energy is the true nature of things. We learn how to focus our attention on that instead of the superficial appearances that we realize are nothing but the holographic images. And so essentially we learn how to live our lives in accordance with the true nature of things instead of images or appearances.
Okay.
And we help our coaching clients achieve the same thing.
Okay. I'm a little confused. We went from states of consciousness associated with energy centers to filters of perception, and I'm not exactly sure what the connection is. Why did we move from one topic to another, and how does that apply to our coaching?
Really? Well, how does it apply to coaching? Like I said, we are working on helping people manifest and live their dreams. Why do we talk about dreams? Because that's the nature of our experience. How do the filters of perception relate to dreams? We realize that the filters work both ways. So there is an inflow of information and there's a projection out. At the point of intersection of both streams of energy, they intersect, forming a holographic image that we think is reality. And that's essentially what we also refer to as the dreamlike nature of things. That's basically why I talk about it, because it helps you understand the dreamlike nature of the world we live in, and also why we work with our coaching clients talking about dreams rather than goals or some accomplishments or whatever. So in other words, we constantly work with the dream, including the current moment is also a dream. It's just simply we often forget that this is a dream. In other words, we're not awake in this dream. If we become awake in this dream, that already is a form of enlightenment. If we remember that we're constantly dealing with the holographic nature of the universe, we're constantly reminding ourselves that we are living in a dream. In other words, again, maintaining degree of lucidity that's happening in daily life is referred to as enlightenment. So basically, we're not only learning how to manifest and live other people's dreams, we also facilitate enlightenment for ourselves and for other people.
And the bridge to all of that was, we were talking about movement and like sourcing, like back when we were talking about connecting our values and the energy of the current state and the present state, and then role modeling and if you weren't quite sure, how can you tap into it, and or what can you access in a moment to connect you back to that which you dreamt up as you coached yourself into requiring as a necessary energy expression, and that movement isn't separate from it. Like it's not just a static thing or tap your heart, but that it's like, move this way, try moving this way and see how it works for you. What does that bring up for you? Can you feel a shifted energy? Move that way and engage with the situation. You move a different way and engage with the situation, or even imagine engaging and see what shows up for you at the end of that.
And when you're imagining,
test.
it's a dream.
Right.
And your body that represents you in the dream is what we call dream body.
And so it might be a fearful body or a courageous body or a holding out body or a
Right, and so the more you work with that, the dream body,
Mhm.
the more you bring the qualities of the dream body that you find most beneficial in your dreams or in your imagery,
Mhm.
and embody them in your physical body. The more your physical body starts moving in the way the dream body moves. Or, from a metaphysical point of view, we actually start integrating the dream body and the
Mhm.
physical body more closely. And that's a profound experience for most people, because what you discover for yourself is that the dream body serves as another energy center. I'm not gonna go much deeper into this because this is actually the practice associated with the element of fire,
Right.
which we haven't gotten close enough to. We are getting a little bit closer to the element of air right now, but element of fire is next. So we learn how to basically develop step by step. But I'm giving you a little bit of hints of what else is possible, what else is available. Developing the dream body to the point that you can do certain cool things with it, or at least quality of movement, culture of movement that you experience in your dreams, even if it is just a visualization, a daydream, is something that then can be translated into your physical body. If you cannot imagine yourself moving smoothly and fluidly, what's the likelihood of you being able to move like that in your physical body? Not very high. So sometimes it's important to also invite our coaching clients to just imagine what it would be like for you to move in a way that you would feel like you're an embodiment of that quality that you're seeking to achieve. And sometimes the quality is what they're really after, not even the achievement of particular destination or particular accomplishment. It's the sense that they're hoping for. It's like people say, well, I won't be happy until I'm a millionaire. Okay, well, how will you feel if you become a millionaire? How will you know that you achieved what you set out to achieve? Well, I will feel really happy. Well, how is it gonna feel in your body? Can you walk as a happy person for me? And as they're learning how to actually tap into that resource within their own consciousness, they are learning how to embody happiness even before they become a millionaire. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't work towards making $1 million. It's a fine goal as well, but we're not no longer perceiving that as like the primary goal. And if you don't make $1 million, you only have 900,000. You failed. You cannot
Forget
be
about
happy.
happiness, yeah.
You just cannot be happy. You totally flunked.
Mhm.
Instead, we learn how we can experience that which we aspire to experience in terms of the quality of consciousness. And it actually makes the achievement of that even more possible. So in other words, it's kind of like we're turning the tables on the goals. Instead of the goal being achieving some accomplishment and then I will feel happy, we say, look, if you're happy, you're more likely to achieve that.
Okay. What is the relationship between the quality of consciousness and the filter of perception? Are they the same thing? I'm a little confused there.
Yeah, the filter of perception of a happy person means that you look at things and they make you happier. You look at the paintings and you're like, wow, this is really cool. I'm really happy that they're here. And another person who looks at the same paintings through a different filter of perception will be like, this is really ugly. There's Chinese people that have no clue how to paint. Or they'll be like, this is wrong. You know, those leaves of that color, there's no leaves of that color in nature. It's totally on drag. And,
And then the other one will be like, dude, were they on drugs? Inspire curiosity, like, how did they do that? What was the process?
Is the direction perception to quality of
Right.
consciousness to culture of movement, or can it go both ways?
So usually consciousness is primary, and it manifests in the culture of movement.
It also manifests in the perception filter.
Yeah,
right?
I'm curious what.
If you bring the perception filter in by painting the bubble, for example, in the energy paint associated with happiness,
Mhm.
and you start perceiving things that the way that a happy person perceives things,
Mhm.
what do you think is going to happen to your culture movement?
Lighter.
It will add the spring to a step.
Okay.
So I think, I don't know if this will help, but I think consciousness
Mhm.
is based on that perception and projection.
Okay, so
Maybe
they're
that's kind of like
really
where you're getting stuck,
intertwined.
right?
Yeah, I was thinking that they were two separate ideas.
That filter bubble, it's what, I don't know,
It's
have a
what
hard time.
creates the quality of consciousness.
Right, because of your perception and
Okay.
projection.
Okay.
Right?
Well, I would even say this. The quality of energy on the bubble
Mm-hmm.
will determine your perception, and the result of that perception will be certain feeling.
So the outer layer is the quality of consciousness that you
Uh-huh.
wish to embody, which then affects the next layer, which is your perception, which then affects the next layer, which is your harmonious culture of movement.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Now I get it. So it's like a three-tiered bubble.
Yeah, so the egg comes first, and then the chicken.
So does that mean just by,
the yolk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so does that mean just by, going through the previous exercise we went through, where we painted on a new energy or for a new quality of consciousness, by doing that, are we automatically changing our filters of perception, or is there more to do?
Good question. And this is always a subject to testing. So, for example, if you brought that energy into your body, did it change your filter? Well, let's find out. For example, let's take a look at something, or let's talk to somebody and find out whether or not you experience things differently.
Okay.
So if you experience things differently, then your filter of perception has been affected. If they don't, well, let's do this exercise specifically dedicated to adjusting the filter of perception accordingly, so that you experience things more consistently in alignment with the values of this quality of consciousness that you aspire to achieve, or aspire to embody.
How do you do that?
By painting the energy bubble
Okay,
with the energy paint associated with the quality of consciousness we were just talking about.
okay. Just the whole energy. Cool.
Okay. So it's really a three-layered idea. The quality of consciousness that you want to embody affects the filter of perception, and then when you perceive things as the kind of person who embodies that quality of consciousness, then you naturally begin to develop the culture of movement commensurate with that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you can also experiment with your culture of movement. What if I just start moving like a happy person? I wonder if it's going to make me happier.
So it can go that
Mhm.
direction too.
So,
Sure.
yeah, I don't want to rule a possibility out. Basically, like there is mind-body therapy and there is body-mind therapy. Which
Mhm.
one is more effective? Well, essentially it boils down to working with mind and body in an integral way.
Mhm.
So we don't want to separate them and say that consciousness always leads the body. Sometimes the body actually has a nice effect on consciousness.
Mhm.
Okay.
Just for example, if your body starts, let's say, hurting or it make you limp, it probably affects your emotions, which in turn affects your state of consciousness, doesn't it?
Mhm.
But in most cases, I would say, working with consciousness as a primary and the physical body and its movement as a secondary is more intelligent, just because it seems to have more consistent influence. So there are, for example, neuro-linguistic programming teachers who say, well, you just copy the movements of the person who you're talking to. Let's say the person is sitting and nodding their head. Well, you also sit there and nod your head, and that will create rapport. Well, that's kind of a really bizarre idea from my point of view. I mean, there's something to it. I don't want to say that it's stupid and completely invalid, but a rapport doesn't happen just because you're sitting and nodding your head. Or like, for example, people say, well, sometimes the person sits and just kind of like does something with their leg, like tapping or crossing legs like this, and maybe like shaking their leg a little bit. Well, if you do the same thing at the same pace, then you kind of enter the same frequency of consciousness as that person is. To me, it's a little bit contrived, although I don't want to rule the possibility of that out. I would say if you really want to use the physical body more fully, well, then just understand their holding pattern. As you get into the holding pattern more fully, you are more likely to also enter a similar state of consciousness as that other person does. Then you may be able to establish rapport more effectively. So in other words, rapport happens on consciousness level. Physical body does play the role, but it's more secondary. But it does play the role, otherwise we wouldn't be using it. We wouldn't be occupying the physical body. We would just exist as ephemeral spirits. So.
Well, and plus, I mean, one of the things that my aha moment about Qigong was that the whole point was that we were actually experiencing, we're developing the ability to access and resource more of ourself while removing hazards of thinking and thought. So the consciousness piece, to me, it's more like when we're talking about resonance and trust. Well, how are you making your decisions? You know, where is that being sourced from? And so that, to me, you were immediately, you know, like, is my body relaxing or tensing? Is my breath, how's my breath? Like, we were actually trying to resource the body to give us some more information about our own resonance.
Yeah, we use body as a tool all the time.
Yeah.
As a gauge, as the tool for testing, and also quality assurance.
Yeah.
Now, we don't stop doing this type of practices once we've done them once or twice. Because as the person progresses along their coaching program, along the timeline, so to speak, that they were working on in the beginning, first of all, they will most likely need some adjustments, some fine-tuning, and also they will need to clarify action steps. For example, in the beginning, we have the action steps that we figured out because we broke down the whole year into half a year, into half a year, 3 months, 6 months, 6 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe 10 days, maybe 5 days. Okay, we have the idea what to do next 5 days, 5 days after that, and maybe 10 days after that. But then the next milestone is like 6 weeks away. That's too far. We need to break it down again. So we often will do the same exercise again. Let's break down where we at right now versus next 3 months into half. It's a month and a half. Let's bring that into 3 weeks. And let's break that down into a week and a half or 10 days. Let's break down into 5 days. Now we know what the next action steps might be. And then from there, we go a little bit further. Okay, now did we achieve the milestones we set out to achieve? If so, great. Let's go towards the next milestone, but let's break it down again in half or in quarters or in 1/8. So again, we have more and more of these smaller steps clarified. We can clarify some of them even in the beginning of the coaching program, but often we won't know, and the coaching client won't know what the detailed action steps need to be 6 months from now. They kind of get the idea where the milestone might be, but the detailed steps, it's just too early for them to think about it. Okay, we will get there once we cross the previous bridge, so to speak. And once we get to the 3-month line, 3-month milestone, definitely we want to know what's the next milestone might be. It used to be 6 months away, now it's only 3 months away. Let's see how we can break that timeline into smaller chunks. Make sense? So in other words, we keep creating clarity of action steps for our clients. We're not providing these action steps, we're inviting them to figure out these action steps for themselves. And then of course we will keep them accountable as to whether or not they took those steps that they said they would. And also we may provide them with support in terms of tapping into additional energy resources or developing particular action plans that are required in order for them to achieve what they set out to achieve, for example, in the next 60 days or 90 days. When that becomes a habit for the person, they may even coach themselves. They may not even need coach anymore. But if they don't start coaching themselves, they may still need a coach, for example, for another year or sometimes even 2 years. So I usually don't work with people for much longer than a couple of years. I mean, I've had some coaching clients that I've worked with for 4 or 5 years, but not many. I would say maybe 1 to 2 years is kind of average, the longevity of coaching. However, on many occasions, old coaching clients would come back to me and say, I worked with you a few years back and it was really great and I achieved a great deal, and then we stopped working together because I felt like I was really on the right track and I just couldn't manifest as much without your help. So I'm back, I want more of that. I say, sure, great. Never mind, I charge a lot more now than I used to 5 years ago. I hope you don't mind that. Sometimes I grandfather them with a little discount. So in other words, I want them to be happy, and at the same time also they recognize that, well, had they not stopped working with me, they would have been paying what they used to pay back then probably. Even then, I sometimes raise the rates after a few years of a person paying me my old rates. I say, well, you know, I used to charge 150, now I charge 250. How about we just agree on $200 an hour, or translate it into a coaching program? It basically comes to maybe, instead of $2,500 for 3 months, just pay me $2,000. Deal? Deal. Let's sign a contract. Let's go. So basically, it's a kind of an ongoing process of adjusting expectations and also working with people's abilities to actually digest your coaching. And some people become more coachable over the course of time, and some people also become less coachable over some period of time for various reasons. We can help them become more coachable, but sometimes we just let them do whatever they need to do with their lives. Maybe they'll come back. In other words, we're not clinging on to them and hoping that they're going to come back and just sitting there waiting for them to come back, twiddling our thumbs. We have better things to do and more people to help. So this kind of creates a sense of ease in terms of you're not struggling to get each and every person you come across into your coaching practice. You basically are working almost like as a gatekeeper of your coaching practice. You're only allowing the right people through the gates. It's going to be fewer people for sure, but the quality is going to be higher. You will be enjoying working with them a lot more. And if you feel like you're not making enough money doing coaching, well, we'll have the next module of our program dedicated to the business of Qigong coaching, so I'll be sharing a lot of good ideas and practices related to that. And if you have any questions about anything that we've covered either today or yesterday?
What do you think of the idea that eventually, you get rid of all filters of perception?
Then they become enlightened.
Yeah.
I like that
So
idea.
you're on board.
Right.
So you go negative filters, positive, or more suitable filters to none at all.
Well, if you have no filters at all, do you stop perceiving?
That's what I was wondering too, like, is that possible for
You
a
start-
human being?
You then perceive things instead of a intersection of what is coming through the filters and your own projection. You just perceive the way things really are.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
that makes sense.
Start perceiving.
Yeah. The windows become clean.
This is where you stop
Yeah,
perceiving,
or
start
just-
seeing.
Cut out the
Oh.
window entirely, like there is a big gaping hole in your bubble of perception. Or
Have
maybe a small one, like a little porthole, like you can just look through it. Oh, wow,
have you
this
met
is neat.
anyone who can do that? I mean,
Absolutely, yes.
who? Like, and how would that look? Like, how? Because it seems like there's always some filter somewhere.
Yeah, so enlightened
Mhm.
people are not necessarily those who have no bubble at all.
Okay,
Probably
so
they
like
wouldn't be
it's like-
alive if they didn't have a bubble
Right.
entirely. It's just they have so many windows
There we go.
that whenever they look at something here or there,
Mhm.
they're not going through the filters as much as they go through just open space.
Yeah.
So that would be like the flexible, like I talk about like the agility of consciousness agility training
Uh-huh.
is kind of how I see it. Because I can't imagine an emotionless human. And if there's an emotion, at least recognizing there might be a filter for a moment, like feeling love, everything's gonna look lovely. If you're feeling sad, everything's gonna look, sad. If, a little bit of that, to recognize that as being part of human and to not have any emotion, to be so neutral all the time.
Well, actually, love is the emotion that is responsible for opening the windows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there can be even being stuck in happiness or stuck in,
Oh, that would be
any
really
sen-
terrible, wouldn't it?
Well, it can be, because then I don't know, I think being stuck in any center.
Oh, I'm not talking about centering.
Oh,
I'm talking about how when you're working with the energy bubble proper,
mm-hmm.
by and large, you have already worked with your internal centers, so much so that they're more or less aligned,
Mm-hmm.
which provides you the access to what in Indian yoga referred to as crown chakra, and in Qigong we consider this not just the chakra above the head, it's actually the entire bubble that surrounds you
Mm-hmm.
from all sides.
Right, flexibility too.
Yeah. So in other words, that is kind of a prerequisite for working with the bubble effectively.
So finding your center is literally eliminating the color, like if pink is happiness and yellow is whatever, I mean whatever, like that, the membrane of the soap having any type of pigment that would then, everything you experience is filtered through that pigment.
Yeah. So
The center has
the
no
less color
pigment.
it is,
Yeah.
the better. And as we know, different colors, for example, associated with different chakras.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even if they're rainbow colors, we know that combined together they form
That's
white
light, yeah.
So essentially, again, minimal bias of perception.
Mm.
And like you said before, enlightenment is a path. You don't need to be like Buddha to be considered enlightened.
Right. Or you may be like Buddha because even what we know about Buddha Shakyamuni, the historical Buddha who founded Buddhism, he got enlightened at the age of 35. Now, what did he do after that? Well, he didn't just sit on a throne and did nothing.
Or lay sideways.
He was traveling a great deal. He
Yeah.
was teaching thousands of students. He was organizing communities in several places in Bodh Gaya and Lumbini and several other places in India, Nepal, and purportedly would spend quite a bit of time also in the forest, literally just camping out. What happened was the forest actually was a private property of a king who donated, or he didn't actually donate, he gave it as a gift to his courtesan. And then the courtesan liked Buddha Shakyamuni for one reason or another so much that she donated that entire forest to him and his community. They were like, cool, now we have headquarters. Never mind, we're living in trees. Maybe they have like treehouse at HQ. And so they were like having a very lively and adventurous life. So the enlightened Buddha actually didn't just stop doing anything and just sat there for the rest of his life. He lived for till he was 80 something. I think 80 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Now, that's a long time to be enlightened. You don't just do nothing, you actually live with other humans and talk to them and communicate and eat and sleep and do what have you. And at the same time, you can do this in a way that's more in alignment with the principles of enlightenment and awakening. So that's what we aspire to experience. Cool. You guys have any questions about anything we've explored, not only today, but also yesterday or even the previous 3 months?
I had a question yesterday. I think, so yesterday you were talking about, gosh, what was it? We were talking about our, the culture of movement in our, oh my god, I lost it, our holding patterns.
Oh, okay.
So, and I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure, kind of like how we have something that Stefan was asking, right? Like the whole perception and projection, it can be the other way around too, right? Like it can be the body projecting first and then getting a perception, right? Is it the same thing with holding patterns? Like I was telling Nancy yesterday that the reason I feel like I got this holding up pattern was because of photography school. Like I was, we were doing portraits and we were taking pictures of each other, and like we noticed in class that everybody was just like slouched like that, right, on our portraits. So one of the things that the teacher said is like, as human beings, right, we just relax. Like we're supposed to tell our clients that they're supposed to stand up straight. But by me seeing that, I'm like, well, I'm just gonna try to walk straight, right, and not just do it whenever I get a picture taken. So that's how I feel like that holding pattern started for me.
Okay.
So by starting that holding pattern, does that mean then I'm starting to project? Does it work the other way around? Like my holding out pattern, that was unconscious, right? And that was kind of my consciousness. But can it be the other way around? Can I be forced, let's say, into holding pattern and then start acting that way?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. For example, holding up. So if I just keep doing this and keep talking to you the way I would talk like this, would it feel like I'm actually exhibiting that state of consciousness associated with holding up pattern? Like I'm kind of proud of myself, or at least self-important to some extent, and maybe even slightly.
I perceive it that way, but do you feel that way? That's what I'm saying. I mean, because I am acting this way, does that mean I am feeling that way too?
How about asking
It
yourself
very
that?
well may be.
Did you feel like you were increasing in the feeling associated with holding up as you were holding up?
That's the part that I don't think so.
Okay.
Right, I don't think that I am, like one of the things about holding up was like we look down on people, right?
More arrogant.
Right. Like, I personally, I think, right, and there's a perception that I see everybody as equal, right? I don't feel like I see people up here or people up there, and that's also whenever he was asking about role models, like I have a hard time having role models because I see everybody as equal, and it's just a matter of practicing more to become that person, right? And it's up to me to practice to become that person or not.
Yeah.
So I see people as equal. It's just a matter of what do we want to put our intention, our focus, our energy into to become that person.
Right. So we don't put people on pedestal because they are not equal.
Right.
We recognize them as role models in a particular area. For example, if, let's say we're talking about career and finances, well, is there anybody who achieved something in your line of work along the career developmental path that you feel like, wow, I would like to be like him? If so, it doesn't mean that he is the perfect role model in everything, in personal and spiritual development and social and relationships and contributions and intimate and personal relationships and hobbies and sports and health and wellness. No. Most likely they are particularly good at that, for example, in your line of work and your career path. Cool. We don't put them on a pedestal for that reason. We just perceive them as the role model of that particular quality. Nothing else, at least unless they're like really awesome and they have some other qualities that we also would like to model after them.
But also holding up. Sometimes you've told me this. I don't know if you still feel it's true or not, or appropriate. That sometimes we hold up so that we don't hold down. So what I heard him say was that actually I was holding up so others wouldn't hold down. Like if I'm supposed to help people sit upright for a photo, then I'm going to. So, and sometimes if some people are really trying not to hold down, like really they're holding down.
They have tendency to hold down.
But they don't want to hold down because they don't want to be holding down anymore.
Yeah.
And that, so then they will like hold up, and it might be a bit contrived, you know.
Yeah,
It's the phrase, keep your chin up.
Yeah.
Yes.
keep the chin-
Right.
Right, yeah.
Essentially, it's
keep
the
your chin up.
compensation mechanism.
Right,
You're compensating for holding down. Now, to find out
right.
relatively easily whether or not it's true, you can actually stop holding up and say, you know what, I've been holding up enough. Now, let's do this. Let's hold down. And spend a few hours, maybe a couple of days holding down. And I wonder if you'll notice any change in your state of consciousness. If you do, well, that's a proof positive that both
The contrast.
both affect each other. The mind affects the body and vice versa. And that's one of the things that Derek did, for example, when he was just learning about holding patterns. He was like, wow, this is fascinating. I'm going to hold each of these holding patterns for a week. I'm not kidding. He literally held each of these holding patterns for a week. Now, he was serious about it.
That would be Derek.
Yeah. And sure enough, he proved to himself that shit works. And, you know, I don't know if you know that about Derek, but he's also like a 32nd degree Mason, like former head of a Masonic lodge here in Portland. So he's pretty serious about exploring spiritual things. As a Mason, you don't just are like following Masonic rules, because as a Mason, you actually study all kinds of religions and spiritual traditions. In the Masonic lodge, there's a huge library of all kinds of different books on each and every of those spiritual paths that are out there. And so he has this habit of exploring things and going pretty deep into understanding each and every one of them. So he just dedicated 6 weeks of his life exploring holding patterns, literally, viscerally experiencing them on a consistent basis for a whole week. And the one thing that he didn't do, and he forgot to ask me, is how do you get out of the holding pattern if you get stuck in it? So it took him a little bit, he didn't know, and eventually he learned about it, of course. At that moment, he didn't know about going back to neutral before going to another holding pattern. So he was actually struggling for some time to also get out of some of the holding patterns that he got himself into. So it's kind of fun, but yeah, I'm sure he can tell you more about that himself. I actually invited him to come to our workshop this weekend, but he was not feeling well, so he didn't.
And then my question, kind of along the same lines, is like with my hip stuff and my foot stuff, could I ever, I mean, if there's such a physical problem, or to say somebody truly has like a short leg, you know, and there isn't a prosthetic, that, you know, like that you're always walking with this limp, or, you know, your body is in a way such that it makes it next to impossible to actually be in a different realm physically.
Oh, it'll fuck you up for sure.
And so is that so then you'll only able to achieve a certain level of states of consciousness?
Uh-huh,
According to this.
according to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say there is also karmic connection between having certain disabilities and your availability to progress in this lifetime along a certain path. So in other words, you dreamed up for yourself an opportunity to experience this particular disability.
Mm-hmm.
Now maybe that's your objective in this lifetime, to really learn as much as humanly possible about that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're not objective to achieve enlightenment in this lifetime, so
They already did that.
stuff
So
part
boring. I got it, okay. However.
You need something more challenging.
Yeah, like, I'm already enlightened. But I have no clue about how to live in a life that's or not crippled enough. Like, you just look okay, but yeah.
Yeah.
So that's that, okay.
I mean, don't take my word as a gospel, so to speak.
I don't take anything as gospel.
Great.
I don't believe
So
it.
experiment it yourself or observe
Mhm.
and ask other people. Basically, I'm far from feeling like I got the last word on each and every thought, idea or line of thought. If there is somebody who understands it better, I'm always open to learning. If somebody says, you know, it's possible to attain enlightenment having, one leg inch shorter than the other, I'm not going to argue with that. I say, great, let me see.
Yeah, but if your perception, if your filter of perception is your belief, your understanding that you are how you move, the state of the body, being able to move, accessing states of consciousness, they all have their form, their shape, what leads. If something's always falling, it's like I'll always be holding out, because there's always one side being used differently. Seated you can meditate, but then there's no life without movement, and so this life is usually in movement, not seated. Yeah, but you still gotta go shopping, or whatever, go dancing, or go do something, right? For moving creatures, not trees. Well, trees move, but anyway. So it's kind of, so according to your belief, then there would be, like you said, at that point you leave it up to karma and karmic, and maybe figuring out how to shift karmic ties or karmic.
Right, so I'm not ruling out the possibility of somebody who is stuck in a particular holding pattern because of certain physical disability. They would have zero chance of experiencing things outside of that particular realm. It's going to be more challenging for them, and maybe it's not a problem. Maybe the fact that they are experiencing this realm is what they're here for in this particular lifetime. So expecting something out of that person and demanding that they would be doing that what everybody else is doing would be completely futile, because, well, if they can't do it, they can't do it. So they may learn how to compensate. They may learn how to overcome it by some artificial means, let's say, I don't know, prosthetics or something. Maybe they will learn how to develop some other sixth sense or seventh sense. Like I was just talking today, how I play tennis. Nobody understands how I managed to play tennis because I don't have depth for perception.
To me, it's the ping pong at that level. That's fast versus
or martial arts,
to
to
have
that
the
matter.
chance to kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So, ping pong too. I mean,
Geez, that's.
and I do play ping pong. Those of you who haven't played, you're welcome to join me at the clubhouse and play some ping pong tonight. And we can definitely have some fun with that. And also, I would be happy to experiment and see how well you're doing with other practices. For example, anything from push hands to Jhana or something else that we've studied at an advanced level of our training, because there's always room for improvement. So if you feel like it, we can kind of wrap up our workshop and move around a little bit.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So, to wrap up, I want to just summarize what we've covered. As you probably remember, but I just want to kind of give you an overall summary. So, we learned is how to practice Qigong coaching, which leads people to helping them manifest and live their dreams. The way that we help people manifest their dreams is by understanding and recognizing for ourselves as well as for other people that we're all already living in a dream. We already are living in a world that's made of energy. We already experience the flow of energy in one way or another, struggle against the flow for various reasons. Most of these reasons are because of some subconscious strategies that we developed for not being in the flow, that manifest in the form of holding patterns, that manifest in the form of stereotypical states of consciousness that we get stuck in, and we basically occupy certain habitual realms of being that are associated with those states of consciousness. Now, if we want to manifest our dreams, often those are outside of our habitual realms. They basically are outside of our comfort zone. So we basically need to develop a strategy for going beyond our comfort zone, and often it's associated with tapping into new energy resources, developing new cultures of movement, developing new ways of using our physical bodies, and also the qualities of consciousness that would be more in alignment with the values that support the manifestation of those dreams. So we have to work on our values, we have to work on our states of consciousness, we work on embodying the state of consciousness in the form of newly developed holding patterns or freedom thereof, as well as the culture of movement that is allows us to walk the talk, so to speak. Now, we also looked at how we can connect with different energy resources, both within our bodies as well as without, using ourselves as our own role models, using ourselves in the future as our role models, or somebody else as a role model that perhaps we can borrow some energy from, associated with particular quality of consciousness or certain trait of character that help them manifest significant success in that particular realm that we're looking at. We also looked at how we can work with our coaching clients, both in terms of just beginning the journey with them and also continuing along the entire length of the coaching program. We looked at how we help them identify the areas of strength and weakness in terms of the pie chart, and develop the game plan using the strategic planning method that we explored today, breaking down the timeline into smaller and smaller chunks. And also we looked at how to change our filters of perception so that whenever we perceive certain things, we can actually filter them through the filters that are particularly helpful for us, whether it is the filter that allows us to perceive lessons very quickly, or the filters that just allows us to perceive things in a more happy and a relaxed way. Maybe this is the filter of perception that is associated with courage or any other quality of consciousness that we find suitable or helpful for us. And most importantly, we realize that we're not just pursuing the dream so that once we get there, then we will experience happiness or we will feel abundant. We actually learn how to tap into these energies of abundance and happiness along the way. So basically, we realize that it's the journey that matters more so than the destination. And even now, in the present moment, we are already living a dream that we perhaps had some while ago that we managed to manifest. consciously or unconsciously. And so that means that we're really living the journey or the lifetime of learning how to live our dreams more consciously and more lucidly. Basically, that's what we call lucid living or being enlightened. So, in the big scheme of things, we help people live more enlightened lives. And of course, we have to walk the talk, being the role models of that for them. So, we want to experience that enlightenment on our own skin, so to speak, first. And then we will be able to help others. If we don't feel fully enlightened, that's okay, because it's also the journey. So a little incremental enlightenment counts. And as we do that, we become much more congruent, much more confident, and much more capable. So that's basically what I wanted to impart on you this weekend and in the last 3 months. And our next 3 months we'll also work on business development for Qigong coaches. How we can become particularly successful as such, how we can also develop business that can provide us with a reasonable flow of energy and money, and also create a following, because money is not the only energy that we are looking after. In other words, abundance of friendship or abundance of support or abundance of love.
So it's about
Good call.
abundance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was like, because if it's all about the internet thing, that's not my dream.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
it's
so
about
I don't-
abundance.
What? Well,
It's
yeah.
about abundance.
You're right. So if it's about abundance, I can do that. But I can tell you straight up, I know for myself, at least now in life,
Mhm.
that there's no way I'm gonna have time to like do videos and figure out funneling and if I even agree with all of that anyway.
Well,
But
there's no obligation to agree or disagree.
mm,
I guess you just do what works, and
Mhm.
certain things that you do seem to work really great for you.
it seems
So-
to work really, really well. Actually.
Yeah, so there's no reason for you to change your marketing strategy, even if it is an unconscious strategy, still it is a strategy, obviously. If what you're doing seems to work for you, then you don't have to change it. If it's broken,
Mhm.
you don't have to fix it, as they say.
Mhm.
Now, if it's not working, or if you're just starting out, now that's a different story.
Mhm.
Because then you have an opportunity to basically start from scratch. Then you don't have the bias of
Mhm.
what you think may work or might not work. And also you have an opportunity to kind of establish it in a way that would be most optimal for getting started from the right foot, on the right
Well, I
foot.
mean,
so
yeah,
to
your
speak.
way definitely reaches way more people than my way would. My way is very local based.
Right.
So if I ever moved somewhere or had to go somewhere, I know my way would be actually first, do I even resonate with these people? Like, should I even be here, right?
Mhm.
And then two, if I do, I'd show up locally, and that's just my way, my process. It has to be kinesthetic, and it has to be,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then
And
develop a following that
and
way.
as you know, I had a clinic for many years.
Yeah, you were
I did
great.
exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Locally, I didn't do anything on the internet except for just had a website that was more like a big brochure
Mm-hmm.
online.
That's
But
what Holly wants.
yeah, she wants a brochure.
She wants. There you go. That's
Yeah.
perfect. Hey, we
Yeah,
found one.
that's the 20th century internet.
Well, there's.
Luckily, we live in the 21st century. The internet has a lot more capabilities than just being a brochure website.
Yeah, but if the brochure is the way that some people would reach you,
Then,
out of ease
Then
of
it's
use,
good.
it's a functionality thing too.
yeah, we don't want to throw away the baby with the bathwater, I could say.
Exactly. My
So-
baby on that one. It's like,
And then after the next
Module,
module
Uh-huh.
quarter, then we're gonna do
another workshop.
the living lucid dreaming.
Yes.
Are we-
No, as a matter of fact, there's
mm,
gonna be a module dedicated to deepening our advanced Qigong practices.
Mhm.
Because we've covered a great amount of territory with our advanced program, and we didn't dive deep. We covered a lot of surface, a lot more than we covered, say, in the basic program. But to go deeper into it, we need to spend a little more time practicing those advanced skills. We'll also refine them. I also will introduce a couple of additional skills which will make your practice a lot more interesting and more effective. And then after that, we'll have a module dedicated to personal development through Green Yoga.
So there's 3 more then.
Yes.
The business development, deepening, and then the lucid dreaming.
So, yeah, so essentially, we're gonna go through the entire rest of this year.
Alright.
Hmm.
Yeah, fun.
Is there a schedule for that anywhere, or
Of
is this
course,
where?
of course. Well, so, this is the weekend workshop for the first module.
Mm-hmm.
The second module goes from April through July.
Maybe you can get that on that
So through
calendar
June,
on the door.
Yes, so,
That would be so helpful.
it would be very helpful.
'Cause, I mean, just to have it somewhere in the ether,
Mhm. So what I'm looking at is,
I
because
asked for the rough workshop dates and they worked out for me.
and I
so-
gave them to you.
yeah, but
Very
he
happy.
didn't give them to anyone else.
And they weren't even concrete, they were just rough.
Yeah.
The first week or something, I was like, alright, that works, very
Yeah.
cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, so the first week of July, which will be July,
Apparently, you're much more flexible than I am.
Actually, I was just really lucky, I have a ton of things scheduled for the year, it just, the next 3 workshops just happened to not fall on anything.
Oh, nice.
I got stuff travel scheduled every month, so I was just like, well, when are the next 3 on?
Yeah,
Fingers crossed. And I was
Cool.
just like, yes, 3 for 3,
nice.
yeah,
so don't change it.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, well then,
so
good. So don't.
Please remind me, did we talk about
Yeah.
the business development workshop on Saturday, June 30th and Sunday, July 1st?
Wait.
Yeah, that was what I heard, it was basically like the first week of July.
Uh-huh.
That's the first. So wait. So the first week of July.
June 30th?
That's
July
the first
1st.
week of July is the 7th,
No.
6th and 7th.
June 30th?
Okay,
July
so it's
1st.
bridging it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Saturday the 30th and Sunday the 1st.
Yep.
And then how does this program go? And then people, they Skype with you once, like you would Skype because you don't live in Oregon. So it's like once a month or once a week, or how does that work? What's the process?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks?
Mhm.
Oh.
And then we'll have, I see, I believe we set it up for September 29th and 30th,
So
If I'm not mistaken.
Is it September 29 and 30?
or maybe the
Oh.
following week. Do you have,
Well, yeah.
No, it's on the computer.
it's on the computer?
Well, I know
Yeah.
that we're gonna be in Ireland.
Right, so I think it's gonna be on October 6th and 7th, actually.
'Cause flying back. Yeah, that would be better for you too, because you will still probably be. Remember last time the acclimation from Spain?
Yeah, it took us like a week.
So you could get one of these probably in your sleep. But.
I can, but
Oh,
I would
wait.
like to be awake
Okay,
for
so
it.
that first weekend in October,
Uh-huh,
so that's the 5th and 6th?
uh-huh.
Okay, I definitely couldn't make that one because I'll be in San Diego.
Oh, bummer. Alright,
Mm.
and then
Shoot,
in,
advancing the practice.
yeah,
Well, maybe, it's okay. I mean, I live with you and I don't get to study because I live with him. When I didn't live with him, then I could study. It's a really interesting phenomena.
that's funny.
I know.
You're getting some studies on a daily basis, alright?
But
Just
the
by,
inter-engaging.
Right.
Whatever. But there's something about the true student
Yes.
hat and then leaving and going back to your own space
I
and
see.
trying things on versus
Changing
the
roles.
hats are so
Right.
there's a lot of hazards in hats, I guess. No, but, yeah, I'm serious. Yeah, it's been interesting to me too because we both thought, oh yeah, you can study more.